So there's my gorgeous wife as she creates a paleo dinner. Okay, so what I want to talk about, here's my microphone here. Okay, so what I want to talk about was the elbow and kind of what causes elbow tendonitis and elbow problems with lifting. I can get this in a better position so I can talk. Alright, so one of the things that happens is that when you're missing internal or external rotation, or you're missing some range of motion, what ends up happening, or like overhead, flexion and extension, what ends up happening is you get overuse in the, what causes elbow pain has a lot to do with the wrist. Now you don't have to have wrist pain to have elbow pain. What happens is that because you're missing proper internal and external rotation, whatever movement you're creating is making you overuse your wrist because your shoulder is not able to internally and externally rotate. For example, a golf swing, a tennis backhand or forehand, I should say. Because what ends up happening is because of either poor technique or missing range of motion, what happens is that because your shoulder's missing proper range, or you don't know how to use that range, you end up having to use your wrist. And this is a flexion, this is flexion, this is extension. So you get too much flexion and extension motions in your either serving or hitting the golf ball when you're swinging, whatever it may be, or when you're lifting weights. Like if you're lowering the weight, like a bench press, you're not able to properly get this proper tightness in the shoulder blades while you lower the bench. So what's happening is you end up pushing forward. Now typically, bench pressing is not going to give you problems in the elbow, but it can. It just kind of depends on the person. But I'm just using this as kind of a reference point as trying to explain kind of a global perspective. You know, it's one of the things I learned from watching Kelly Starrett videos of the mobility WOD is that movement is integrated. And when you're missing range of motion, it expresses itself in a way that can cause problems. And again, a lot of this has to do with me as my experience. I've been a personal trainer for 12 years. I work with a lot of different people. One of the common occurrences with people who do have elbow pain has a lot to do with the wrist. And what I mean by that is, like, I had a client, he was wondering why his elbow was hurting, and one of the things that was different about his day was that he was holding his briefcase. Not too heavy, but definitely held it all day. And that can cause overuse of the forearm flexors and extensors, and then when you kind of translate that into weight training, it can show up even more when you're doing some curls or you're doing some pressing. If you're doing heavy deadlifts, for example, you're gonna have to grip the bar really tight, which can overuse these muscles here. Now, just heavy deadlifting isn't gonna cause that problem, but if you kind of combine it with other motions, it can. If you're missing internal and external rotation, or typically internal rotation is what people are missing. Because I mean, one of the things that also happens that causes elbow pain, just my anecdotal kind of experience with elbow pain, is when I heavy back squat, I pinch the shoulder blades back, load the bar up on my back, and I position myself in a way where I'm trying to keep my elbows back. The wrist and elbow is not in a good position. Like, I'm missing some range of motion. My chest is very tight, my shoulders very tight. So what ends up happening is I'm not able to get a good position. I can't keep my wrists in neutral, so maybe I'm forced to do this. Now, if I have 300 pounds on my back or any significant amount of weight, I'm pressing that bar against my back super tight, so that way I keep a solid core. I'm pinching my shoulder blades very tight together, and I'm setting myself up to do a squat. Now, think about my wrist. It's like this. Now, maybe not a problem on the first set, second set, but as each set goes on, if I squat multiple times a week, I'm getting a lot of force this way on 300 pounds or however weights I'm lifting. I'm creating a lot of tension. I'm creating a lot of torque, and that will cause a lot of issues here in the elbow, because what ends up happening is since you can't keep neutral position on the forearm or in the wrist, you're having to do this instead, and when you're squatting, you're having to do this. And sometimes what ends up happening is instead of doing this, you'll scoot your elbow back and you'll push forward like this, which is not ideal, so your elbows are flared out. And that can also be a problem in the shoulder. So I'm not sure if that helps explain a lot of things, but I hope that kind of gives you an idea and perspective of kind of what causes elbow pain. It's never just a one-size-fits-all thing. It's kind of a multiple things that cause this problem. And it's just kind of being aware of your positioning, which is why you should always focus on mobilizing, so that way you can decrease your chance of getting injured when you do lift. And when you do have injury, like particularly like lateral lateral, the side of your elbow here, outside, or medial, inside. When you have that kind of pain, what ends up happening is you'll get, once that tissue, that connective tissue, or the tendons get inflamed, and they hurt a lot, they are a bitch to completely cool down. Because what ends up happening is they are hot, and they hurt, and they're pissed off, and anything you do, like carrying a phone, will piss it off. You know, so it's kind of like, you know, if it bothers you, you can work through it, but if you push it too much too often, you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to stop completely.